Things that you'll need: a ruler, a box cutter, some 1.5mm Veg Tan leather, a groover, an edger. This is a number 2, a number 1 would be fine. Some thread and needles, a coin, some leather dye, and some wax or polish, and as an optional extra, an edging agent, a slicking agent. Oh yes, you also need a pricking iron. This is at a 5mm pitch, diamond shape pricking iron. This is a piece of 14cm by 6.5cm 1.5mm Veg Tan leather. I like to use this custom made leather die to cut, but before I got this I just used a box cutter, a coin and a suitably sized pot. Decide where you want the bottom of your sleeve to be. Oh, by the way, this coin, I've taken the edge off, the face off it, so that it's smooth when I press it down onto the leather. And on a cutting mat, I'm just squaring it up into the corner there. And then with the box cutter, I'm going to take 5 slices. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and oh, don't want to move it, 5. So just taking the pot, I'm squaring it up onto the end. This is the top of the pen sleeve, and then I'm taking 5 slices around there. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and so that rounds off the end. You can use a touch of sandpaper just to make that smooth. I'm measuring 10.5cm from the bottom because that's where I want my stitching to start, and the same on the other end, that's where it will finish. Using a groover and a firm pressure, I'm just pressing down. Hope you can see this. This is where the stitching line will go, and this is set at 3mm from the edge. It's not essential. But it gives a little bed for the thread to lie in. Looks a little bit more finished. And there, right up to that pencil mark there. Okay. Now it's just a matter of pressing through the leather. You can do it by hand, you can use a mallet if you want to. Next I'm going to take my number 2 edger, and number 1 would be fine as well, and this is going to bevel the edges. So applying an even pressure, just smoothly go around the edges without it digging in. So this will give a nice finished effect on the edge. I'm not forcing it. That's fine. and sometimes I get little fuzzies on the inside edge as well, so I'm just going to take them off as well. Just shaving them off. We're going to be slicking the edge and smoothing it later anyway, but that's better already. Now I've decanted saddle tan dye into this old glass jar, and using a wool dauber I'm just going to liberally apply the dye to the leather in a circular motion, making sure that there's a good penetration. I like to use Fiebings oil-based dye. And then making sure it's even. Yeah, that's going to be great. And then on the other side as well, don't have to do it all because you won't see the inside down here, but might as well. That's great. And then one more on the other side to get a nice rich colour. It will dry to be a bit lighter, of course. There we go. I can see there's a good saturation there because it's sitting on top of the leather. That's going to be great. So I'll leave that for about 10 or 20 minutes. And then it'd be ready for the next stage. Okay, so I've actually dyed the edges black as well. I just used a cotton bud and just dragged it around the edge with black dye. And then using this finishing agent, slicking agent, it's called Toko it's Japanese. It's an alternative to gum tragacanth, and it's a lot like PVA glue. Just using my fingertips, I'm slicking the edge so that it binds all those fuzzies together, and then it will be halfway to being burnished. I'll use this piece of old chinos just to help it along its way. We'll burnish it properly at the end and make that really super slick. Okay, it's not 100% dry, as you can see. There's still a difference in tone there, but I want to move on to the next stage, which will be stitching it. Now, if I was going to be putting someone's name on this, I would do it at this stage while it's still damp. It's very effective then to imprint the leather at this stage, so that's what I would do normally, but this is a demonstration for a video, so I'll just go on to the next stage, which will be sewing. Actually, before I sew it, I'm going to add some wax polish. This is leather wax. Carnauba cream could be used, or some other similar product, and this will give it a really nice, rich and smooth look, and it'll help to polish it up later. We might hit it with another dab of polish later, but that's gonna be just fine like that. I mean, already you can see, without putting much effort into it, it's starting to take a shine. That's looking really nice. So now I'm ready to sew. For sewing, I'm going to use this thick, it's about 1 millimeter thick polyester waxed thread. You can get it from craft store, and a couple of needles because I'm going to be saddle stitching this. Now I'm not going to do a tutorial on saddle stitching, there are plenty of those available on YouTube, but you need 2 needles, and then we're going to use 4 times the length of my piece, so about that much, and thread up the 2 needles and then get cracking. I'll just show you a little bit of that. To thread the needles, it's quite easy. You just thread it through, give it a 10 centimeters or so, and then push the needle through the strands of thread like that, make a loop, pull it through, pull it tight, and then we're ready to go. Okay, so I've got 2 needles now, 1 on each end, and this is where I'm going to start stitching. So I'm just going to poke through, and I know those holes have been made well, so there's no difficulty in threading that first needle through. Just going to pull it through, so it's the same length of thread both sides. And then my first stitch is just going to go through on the next hole. There it is, and pulling it through. Okay, and then on the other side I'm taking that needle that came through first and then poking it through just like that. So that makes my first stitch. I think I'll do 2 stitches just for strength. There we are. Okay, and there's just a matter of just following it round, just being consistent, making sure that they overlap each other consistently. I'm just applying a little bit of pressure to keep it taut. And I'm just going to go around the end like that. I don't normally hand stitch these. I have my sewing machine. Obviously helps to speed things up, but for small items like this in leather, there's nothing that quite compares to a hand stitched effect. It really is quite nice. Now I've reached the end of the stitching line, so just to finish off and tie off, I'm just going to poke it through between the 2 pieces of leather, so that's coming up inside the, between the leather there. That's right. And then the same on the other side. So that was my last hole there. I'm going to poke it through this hole here, the one that's next to it. So in other words, double backing up one step, if you like. There it is. Okay, so it's going to coming up through through the pieces of leather there. Alright, so they're together now, and then I can tie that off. That won't be coming undone then. Okay. And then I'll cut that. You could melt it as well. What I think I'll do is just bury it in there. Then you won't be able to see it anymore. Okay. I don't like this corner on the end here, so I'm just going to lop that off. Just take a triangle off the end, just like that, and using my still damp Q-tip, just blacken the end off there. Okay, now we're ready for finishing. Just a piece of dowel. It's going to give it a nice shape. And then we're into buffing it to finish. I might spend a bit more time doing some burnishing. Make that really slick and smooth. And then we'll be done.